Welcome to Beyond the Label, a raw, real-life look at living with disabilities, presented by Century Martial Arts, the world leader in martial arts since 1976. CenturyMartialArts.com for everything that is martial arts. And now your host, Mike D. and JD.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Beyond the Label. I'm JD and just can't get rid of this guy. He keeps coming back like a bad penny. Nah, just picking on him. Hey, thanks for joining us again, Jay. Great to have you. You did such a great job last time that I thought I'd have you back again. We've got a...
Hey, no problem.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. You did a great job. Not much editing on the last tape, so I said this is a guy that's got to keep coming back. He makes my job nice and easy. Hey, we got a pretty interesting topic today going on. And we're going to talk about anxiety. And anxiety is a big issue for, well, everybody pretty much. But I think it's magnified for those that have a disability. And in these times with COVID-19 and everything that's going on in our world, anxiety is at an all-time high, I believe. And, you know, people have their own issues on top of these national issues and worldly issues to deal with. And so, Jay, you and I pretend to be experts a lot of times, and we tell you what we think. But this time we actually have a real expert here. Do you believe it? I finally found a real expert to come in and tell us about something. So I'd like to introduce Chrissy Assad. She's been more than gracious to come on the podcast with us and give her insight on anxiety, and she's going to give us some tips on dealing with it. Yeah. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me, Jason. I'm really flattered that you asked me to come talk with you about this topic that I think, you know, a lot of people experience anxiety and a lot of people experience stress. And often related feelings of depression, and it's good to kind of deal with, you know, the stigma of it and just talk about it and get it out there.
You know, so the special thing that I didn't tell you about Chrissy is that her husband and I have been best friends, Jay, since we were in kindergarten. So we're just like brother, try that. You know what I'm saying? blood brothers without the blood, right, Jay? Mm-hmm. And
right.
And he knows me inside and out, and we can complete each other's sentences and things like that. And I felt like this is a tough topic, and so to have you along, Chrissy, and just to know. You know, the relationship between me and your husband and the fact that, you know, I consider you guys family, it makes it a little easier. So I guess I'll start and you can kind of tell me, but I guess the best way to start is to give you guys my background as it relates to anxiety. So it's no secret that obviously I was born with cerebral palsy. So that means that consequently, you need a little more help with certain things. You become a little more reliant on people. Your level of trust in people has to be magnified, and through that, I think you build different relationships, and that's good and that's bad. Look at me, Jay. I'm sounding like I'm an expert at this already, but I'm really not. I'm just sounding like it. But
well, you're an expert at your life.
So for me, anxiety is kind of a tough issue, and it, like when you're a kid, it's much different than what I deal with now. One of the funny stories that I'm going to share with everybody, and I don't know if your husband would care me to share the story, but I'm going to do it anyway. We've been friends since kindergarten. What's he going to do? You know, he's not going to do anything. But so one of my earliest memories actually of anxiety, and this is another reason I wanted you on the program, was his birthday party when we were kids. I'd have to say it was like first or second grade, right? And so everybody else is like super excited to go to the birthday party. Eric and I are best of friends. Like, shouldn't have been a bit of a problem. And for me, the whole anxiety of going to the party, it wasn't hanging out with the kids or interacting. It was the separation that I was going to have to deal with from my parents. And so the thing is for me, it was pretty traumatic. And it was like, you know, they left and the waterworks started, and you know, it was a whole big to do. And I think that, you know, that stemmed for me from just having to be around my parents so much with the extra help. And I felt like if they left, it may mean they weren't coming back. And then your mind rolls into extremes, and you're like, well, what if they get into an accident, or, you know, so you're having these thoughts at, you know, what, 6, 7, you know, and for me, it got to a point where that anxiety, you know, they sent me to see a clinician like you know, for children. Like, you know, you're a little too connected to your family. What's going on? And of course, I felt like I didn't feel comfortable enough talking to somebody about how I felt. I certainly wasn't going to talk to a stranger who kind of put things in the manner of, well, you know, if your parents would just let go a little bit and force you, then things would get better.
Okay.
And that for me didn't work. They tried it. They sent me to this, what should have been a pleasant summer camp, but for me was a god awful experience. You know, at around the same age, that didn't work, and so I kind of, I guess, you go through and you work things out yourself. But yeah, I mean, so that was early on what my experience was like. And I don't know. I mean, do you tend to find that a lot of individuals kind of have that same similar backstory where the anxiety starts at a very young age?
I think it's different for everybody. For a lot of people, they come in and they talk about how they've been anxious like their whole lives or since they can remember. And they have, you know, might have some examples from childhood of when, you know, situations like you talked about with the birthday party or going to summer camp, where it became like their anxiety became very real for them. And they were very fearful or very worried. You know, other people report that, you know, their anxiety has started like later in life, in adulthood. Like if something, you know, a significant traumatic event happened to them, you know, that kind of like set off their intense feelings of worry and fear, or even panic for some people. But it sounds like since you were a little kid, like that you've been really trying to figure out how to cope with it, and how to, like, you've had to adapt over time and figure out like how to manage all of those feelings while also like navigating around your physical disability.
Yeah, definitely. And you know, the thing for me, and the weird thing was so once I was at the party, right, and we had a good time and whatever, you know, and then my parents would come pick me up. I'm like, no, I'm not going.
Yeah.
But it took that extra time to be able to get through that. And so I always attributed it to, you know, the disability and the needing more help. I don't know if you can speak to that, or if you have any
well, so the way that anxiety works is that, so basically like an initial, like a triggering event happens, like some sort of like either event that like scares us or makes us very worried or something. So like, so let's take the example of when you were a child. So you're a child and you're going to this birthday party, and you, I'm assuming, were afraid of being apart from your parents, right? Because
Yep.
you like relied on them for so much, and they were like your rocks. They helped you
Right.
with everything, right? And so being apart from them was really scary. So what happens is when we experience the feeling of fear, something called the fight, flight, or freeze response kicked in. Have you heard of fight or flight before?
I have. Yep.
Yeah. That's a very more like common phrase, but it's a very old, like humans have been like over time we have evolved with this fight or flight response. Like it was very useful, like in like the way thousands of years ago when like we were having to fight bears and things like that. Because if like, a bear is coming to attack you, it's like, all right, am I going to run from this bear? Am I going to like fight this bear with my spear? Right. So our brains like evolved in such a way that protected us and kept us safe, basically. Like this fear response kept our species alive. But nowadays it's because we've continued to evolve and our brains have continued to change. The fight or flight response it's basically a lot of times like an overreaction, because a lot of the things that provoke fear in us now are not life-threatening. Like you having to go to that party as a little kid, it was scary for you, but it wasn't like if you went to Eric's party, you were going to die.
Right.
But
Right.
at the same time, your brain was basically the emotion center of your brain was basically telling you like, if you go to this party, like it was basically saying like the emotions were saying like you might die, right? So it was like making you very, very anxious. And so so you have this, okay, so you get the news that you're going to the party, you start to feel fearful, your fight or flight response kicks on. And so then, in this example, it sounds like you were kind of like maybe like a flight response. Like, I don't want to do this. I want to avoid it. Like my parents can't leave me. They need to stay here with me. Right. So you get like very anxious, you start crying, you get upset. One of the things, we experience a lot of physical symptoms when we're anxious. So you might, like your heart might start racing. You might start to sweat, your pupils dilate. Our bodies actually start to digest our glucose, or we like process our glucose in our body more quickly. Some people might like pee on themselves, right? Because your body is actually trying to empty itself out to be lighter so that it can run away. So you're having all of these like crazy physical symptoms and you're overwhelmed emotionally, right? And so it's like this huge, and that's basically how panic happens, when you just become like completely, you can't think at all. And so the emotion part of your brain takes over and you can't really get like a rational thought in, right? But what really needs to happen is the thinking part of your brain. So we have, and if I'm like confusing you, just tell me to stop.
No, you're doing okay. Great. No, wonderful.
So we have the emotion part of our brain, which is called like the amygdala. And it's this little like almond shaped thing kind of in the back over here. And then we have the cortex, like the prefrontal cortex, which is kind of like the gray squiggly part of our brain. And that part of our brain gives, basically like helps us understand our feelings and gives us context to our feelings. So if we didn't have the cortex, we'd just be like running around on like raw feelings all the time and wouldn't be understanding them, okay? But part of how we get over our anxiety is that our thinking part of our brain, our cortex, helps put our feelings into perspective. So what happened was you were at the birthday party, your brains, you started like calming down and relaxing a little bit, so that emotion part of your brain started to chill out enough for the thinking part of your brain, the cortex, to start coming in and saying like, oh, wait a minute, like I'm not in danger here. I'm having a lot of fun. I'm with my best friend. There's lots of other grown-ups. So if I need something, they can help me. So it started like basically challenging all those worry thoughts and saying like, I really don't need to be worried about this. I'm having a lot of fun. And so what your brain is doing, or what it did do, was that it learned that, after that initial like basically like eruption of fear, and after you started to come down a little bit, you learned that, okay, I can tolerate this scary experience, and the scary experience actually wasn't scary at all, and I'm totally okay. So by the end of the party, you were just like, oh, I'm fine. Like, I'm having fun. I don't want to leave. Right. So
Right.
the way that our brains basically get over anxiety is that we learn that we can tolerate anxiety. So the way we have to deal with it is basically to make ourselves tolerate it and make ourselves kind of sit through it and understand it, and just kind of like practice dealing with the emotion part of it. And then our thinking part can come into play and help us kind of rationalize things a little bit more.
So I guess the question is not to put you on the spot with a question that you can't answer, but is there a reason that some people are better at dealing with that than others? Like, I mean, I'll be the first to tell you, you know, like it's pretty tough for me, but you know, that may not be the same experience for Jay. I don't know what your experience with anxiety is, Jay, or I don't know if you want to share that, but.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think everyone suffers from some sort of anxiety. I mean, I think back to, I played hockey growing up, and I was a goaltender, kind of high pressure. And before every game, I would be so anxious and so nervous, I'd throw up. And I guess so. And then, growing up, I kind of grew out of that. You get, accustomed to it. And I think your brain, adjusts. I guess a question for me is there's certain events, that can cause anxious or anxiety and behavior. And then, what about people that have, maybe it's more prevalent on a daily basis. So, cause that was only one event for me, made me anxious, happened every Saturday, and I knew to expect it. I didn't eat or drink before, and that's how I coped with it. But what about people who have it every day, that have a fear of leaving their house, because of it?
So there are a lot of different types of anxiety. There is more like generalized anxiety, which basically means that you worry a lot about maybe like particular things. Like an example would be like you worry about your job a lot, or you worry about your finances or your family. Then they're sort of in the way that the professionals in my field are like conceptualizing anxiety has been changing over time. But we also, we look at post-traumatic stress as related to the anxiety family, right? And post-traumatic stress is more like there is a traumatic event or a repeated series of traumatic events. And over time they build up, and then you have, subsequent symptoms related to that, like nightmares or flashbacks or things like that. And then there's something like obsessive compulsive disorder, right? So then you're having like obsessive thoughts a lot of the time, and then trying to deal with the thoughts by engaging in behaviors that you tell yourself will make the thoughts, like neutralize the thoughts or make them go away. So if you're talking about like, like sort of daily anxiety, like people who are just like very fearful, might be too fearful about leaving their house, something like that. It's the way it's treated is going to vary person to person. Some people, can find like medication very helpful. Like you've heard of like Zoloft or Prozac or, Paxil or any of those drugs in that family. And some of those like people take on a regular basis, and that helps kind of lower their overall baseline of anxiety. There's other medications that people take in the moment if they're having a panic attack. What's most effective is going to therapy and taking medication has been proven to be most efficacious in dealing with just like overall generalized anxiety, like anxiety you might feel on a regular basis. I think when I work with people who come to my office, you know, I'm not somebody who's like, no, get on medication. You need to get on medication to deal with this. I like working with people, trying to teach them the skills that they need to deal with it. And then if after we've basically exhausted everything or they're continuing to do worse, then I say like, okay, now it's probably time to talk to, you know, a nurse practitioner or medical doctor about meds that might help you. One of the main ways that anxiety is treated is with something called cognitive behavioral therapy. And what that means is that, so the idea behind cognitive behavioral therapy is that you experience a thought that causes a feeling, and that feeling leads to a behavior. So an example might be you're walking down the street and somebody gives you a weird look and you feel angry that they were looking weird at you. So then you yell at them, right? So when we're doing CBT with somebody, what we want to do is say like, okay, what was the initial cognitive behavioral therapy, also CBT? So we want to say like, what was the initial thought you were having? So like, oh, well, I was walking down the street and I thought that person looked weird at me. And then we want to say like, okay, well, how did that make you feel? Well, it made me feel really angry. And then I yelled at them, and then they got, you know, and then all kinds of bad consequences would happen from that, right? So we want to say like, all right, well, let's go back to the thought. How can we reframe or change or address the thought, right? So I thought they looked weird at me. Well, maybe it didn't have anything to do with you. Maybe they were just having a bad day. Maybe they had just, stepped in a puddle. Maybe they were late to a meeting, so what you do is you help the person identify evidence that does not support the thought that they're having that is causing them like the distressed feeling. So if we're talking about anxiety, a typical anxious thought, might be, I'm worried, right now might be like, all right, well, I'm really worried that if I leave my house, I'm going to catch coronavirus. So I need to stay in my house or else I'm going to catch coronavirus. So we'd say, okay, let's test that thought out, right? Like, what's the evidence that supports that thought? So if you step out of your house, you'll catch coronavirus. And it's like, well, no, not if I step out of my house, right? Like, well, okay, then. So if you're at where? Like a grocery store or a doctor's office? Well, I'm more worried about going to the grocery store. It's like, okay. So what kind of precautions are you taking when you're going to the grocery store? So you're kind of helping the person see like, all right, there are things that it's not that if I walk out of my house, I'm going to catch coronavirus. It's that, teaching them basically like, okay, if I put myself in like high risk situations, like I don't wash my hands, or I don't wear a mask, or I walk into, a hospital and start touching everything and get super close to other people, then that, it's like, okay, if you were going to do that, yeah, be worried that you're going to catch coronavirus. But if you're just planning on like going out of your house and going to the grocery store and picking up some groceries and you're being responsible and doing what you need to do to keep yourself safe, then your risk level is very low, right? So we're helping that person identify the thoughts that they're having that are making them feel anxious and distressed. And then we're helping them learn how to challenge those thoughts. And so it's a lot of work. And kind of, Jason, going back to what you were saying earlier about like, why do some people struggle more than other people with it? And I think, everybody experiences it to a different extreme. But when you're learning to deal with and manage anxiety, a lot of it is just about practice and just practicing skills that you're learning to deal with it. And it's a lot of hard work. It's not easy, and it doesn't happen overnight. You have to, it takes at least, I'd say a series of months before this, let's say like the skills that you learn become more second nature, right? But because you're teaching yourself to think in a new way. If you've grown up anxious, you've grown up that way. That's the way you're used to thinking and understanding things. So so telling yourself to stop and think a different way about stuff, you know, is going to feel very, very uncomfortable. And the feeling of discomfort is actually like a good sign. The feeling of discomfort is showing that, like, okay, you're doing something different. You're doing something to make changes so that you can experience some relief and feel better.
You know, and I think that for me, that's where the martial arts really came in to play. Like as an adult with anxiety, so now my anxiety shifted. I think from when I was a kid, you know, those social interactions to more so of it seems to be like medical events are very scary for me. I was a guy that was on the rescue squad. You would think that it wouldn't be quite as much of a shock, but it's medical events as it relates to my family or friends. As you guys all know, right now I'm dealing with something with our cat, and today was just like, you know, I tried to practice all the stuff that I've been working on, and today was just a meltdown over a litter box, and the litter box might be too high, and you know that, and so that was just like the last straw for me, and but it was kind of the culmination of the whole thing, I think. And for me, I mean the skills, or when I feel like I'm in the best control, and I learned this from the martial arts instructor. You know, she had told me, okay, so if this happens, okay, well, what are you gonna do? Like, okay, and so you're gonna do that, and then just take that series of steps. Like, so if A happens, what can we do? You know, what are the realistic options that you have here? And so for me, with the cat, what I've been able to do, and I'm fairly thankful for it, is and I don't want to bore people with my story or my issues, but I think this brings a bit of realism to what we're trying to get across. So for me, I found a vet that I could trust, and we've got, I would say, a pretty good relationship, and he knows how I'm wired, and we're good friends. And so for me, when this issue came up, it was like, okay, here's the issue. You know, I had the initial freak out, and then it was like, all right, well, what's the plan? And so I have to break it down in terms of what the plan is. But then, even though I have the plan, we know what the plan is. I'm like, on a scale of 1 to 10, like, how serious is this? So all that is mapped out. Somebody would say, well, it's maybe a little bit of a risk, but not too bad. But then the what ifs get going in my head, and the what ifs are hard to stop. And I guess I feel bad because, you know, I come on these podcasts and I talk to you guys in my video blogs about, you know, how I'm doing things and how it works. And then, you know, I'll have a struggle point, and then I kind of feel defeated, or who are you to talk to these people when you can't even control the thing yourself? But I can tell you that those skills have seemed to help me some. I mean, I was to the point of this morning just pulling the plug on the whole day and sitting and sitting with the cat, and it's like, party says I can't do that, but the other party wants to, and so you just have to kind of pull yourself together the best you can and move forward. And then the other part for me is the expressive part. I mean, like, amongst you guys here, little do we know we're recording this podcast for everybody to see, but amongst you guys here, I feel comfortable enough where I can tell you that experience. But so those types of management skills, I mean, is there anything else that you can offer anybody else that may be experiencing the same or something that's worse?
Yeah. So you one of the major things you just really hit the nail on the head with, Jason, is that when you're experiencing worry, the best thing that you can do is make a plan to deal with that worry, or else the worry is just completely useless. So in order to make your worry effective, like an example would be, you know, okay, I'm very worried about my pet. My pet is, you know, I think my pet is sick. So your choices are, you can either avoid to deal with it, which just means you're just going to sit there and worry that your pet is sick, or you work with a veterinarian to, come up with a treatment plan in order to, address the issue, or at least get more information. So right now you're basically at kind of like, I'd say like maybe like step one in the process. Because right now, from what you've told me, and you can tell me, like, be like, no, don't talk about this. But, you need to get more information about what's happening with your cat, right? Like,
right.
You're kind of waiting on that.
Yep. And he's giving me all the information he can give me. And he's like,
right,
we're not going to know until after the surgery tomorrow.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, what if it's too late, or what if
Yep. So then even though you have this plan in place, and it's like, all right, well, and you're telling yourself, okay, well, we have our plan. And then what you need to do is kind of, if you start going down the what if road, be like, all right, wait a minute, there's nothing that I can do right now other than say, like, all right, I have identified, like, this is our course of action, right? There's nothing else I can do right now, other than wait, and it's going to sit and feel uncomfortable. So what do I need to do to get through this waiting part, right? Like, do I need to, and then this is where have you heard of the term coping skills?
Yeah.
Yeah. This is where like coping skills would come in hand, right? Because coping skills are the things that you're going to use in order to get through your distress or get through, let's say, a difficult time. And coping skills aren't going to solve the problem, and they might not make you feel like, they're not going to fix everything, but they might help at least buy you some time and get you through that moment, right, of when you're very distressed. So like a coping skill could be, you might want to just go and distract yourself for a little while, and you say like, all right, I'm just going to go watch a ton of like TV, and so I don't have to think about tomorrow, right, and the surgery I'm really worried about, so I'm just going to distract myself about it. Another coping skill is exercise, right? So I'm going to exercise. I'm going to like practice my karate forms. Like I'm going to, I just lost my train of thought. I'm going to like move my body. I'm going to get my heart rate up, right? That's another great thing to do. Using your support network, talking to people. Like you mentioned to me, like you almost called Eric, right? So you're thinking about like reaching out to people and telling them what's going on. That's huge, because the more you externalize how you feel, and like talk about it, like the less you are like keeping it inside and kind of letting it fester and just swirl around and create more of those like what if thoughts. Go ahead.
Well, Eric will be the first to tell you, and again, I hate to use me as the example, but I guess it's the example here for this time, and I'm sure that there are other people dealing with other things that can apply these same similar principles. Am I not correct in that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, this one really simple but very effective tool that like everybody can use is called diaphragmatic breathing. And so what that means is you breathe in through your nose and while you're breathing in through your nose, you expand your belly. So you're not breathing in through like taking a big inhale of air through your chest like you might at the doctor. That's not what you're doing. You're basically breathing from your belly. If like musicians or singers or
right, and in the martial arts world, that's
right.
Everything is that type of a breath.
Yep.
And that does that meditation and that calm. If you can get yourself to that point in the midst of a panic,
right,
it helps. But getting from point A to point B,
right. And you need when you're panicking, it's really about doing what makes sense and kind of bringing yourself back down. Because when you're in a panic, you're just like trapped in your emotions in your head. It's like you're not even. When I talk to my clients, I kind of describe it as like you're not even in your feeling like you're in your body anymore. Like you're just like all over the place. So you want to do things that kind of bring you back into yourself. And so taking that really like slow breath through your nose, expanding your belly, and then out through your mouth. Actually, what it does is that it basically sets off this reaction in the body. There's like a nerve in the body called the vagus nerve, and what the breathing does is that I can't remember if it pushes on the nerve or releases it, but it does something to the nerve, and basically the nerve sends the message up to the brain to tell the brain to chill out.
Hey, Jay, we know all about what happens in Vegas, right?
That's right. We don't talk about it. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
Same similar principle.
Yes. So so when you get all anxious, that nerve basically tells the rest of your body, like kicks off all these processes in your body and releases all these hormones that like your stress hormones. So when you do that kind of breathing, it's basically telling your body to calm itself. Other things you can do. So you can do the diaphragmatic breathing. You can actually, in a training I went to once, the trainer was talking about how eating a piece of chocolate can actually help you calm down, because you want to replenish your sugar levels in your body. Because when you're in a panic, your body is burning sugar faster. And if your blood sugar gets low, right, that's going to have a big impact on your mood and your ability to control your mood. So eating like getting something to eat, I think anything that is going to be sort of like sensory based. So like you could take a really hot shower. You could take a really cold shower. You could, drink some hot tea. You could drink some coffee. Like anything that you associate with kind of comforting yourself, is going to help you in that moment of panic. Some people report like they just need to curl up in bed and like cover themselves in blankets and kind of limit all stimulation, right? Like limit, they need to block out all the light. They just need to completely kind of hibernate in order to come back to themselves. So, that's what I mean when I say like, do what makes sense. Like if you are feeling really anxious and you need to go and be by yourself and take some space. You don't need to like be a hero and push through the moment just to say that you pushed through the moment. Listen to what you need and try to give that to yourself.
So Jay, I think this is probably a good time for a little quick break, and a word from our sponsor, Century Martial Arts Supply. You have any questions before we take the break, or are you good to go?
I'm good.
All righty, so we'll take a quick break, and we'll be right back with you. This is Beyond the Label.
Beyond the Label, presented by Century Martial Arts for everything that is martial arts. It's no secret, every martial artist, no matter their age, dreams of becoming a legend. Having their name listed among the greats like Bruce Lee, Chuck Norris, and Jackie Chan. You can hide it or deny it, but you know it's true. Being a legend takes raw talent, dedication, big breaks, and an ability to survive a roller coaster called fame. But it also takes one more thing to go with it: the best gear and equipment in the world. From the company that is martial arts, Century Martial Arts. They aren't just another martial arts supplier that's never set foot on a mat. They are martial artists, and that means they know their products and use what they sell. From uniforms and training gear to weapons and equipment, Century has it all for every martial arts style. Although you may never be listed among the greats, you can still shop like one at CenturyMartialArts.com and unleash your legend within. Century Martial Arts, the world leader in martial arts since 1976. You're listening to Beyond the Label, a raw, real-life look at living with disabilities, presented by Century Martial Arts. Check them out at CenturyMartialArts.com. Now back to the show with Mike D and JD.
Welcome back to Beyond the Label. I'm JD, along with my co-host. You're looking for Mike D, but he's not here again. He's playing hooky, but I brought my buddy back. I got I got Jay. He's our marketing director, and he's loving this podcasting stuff. So, hey, Jay, thanks for being with us today. Glad to have you again.
Yeah, absolutely. Glad to be here. In keeping with spirits and what we got, I have my cup that my daughter bought for me. Positive reinforcement. It says, "Thanks for being awesome," because I constantly go around saying I'm awesome.
Hold that up a little higher so we can see that. Will you?
See? You see
yeah.
it?
Nice.
That's the cup of the month, in case you wonder. So anyway, we are fortunate to have a great guest with us today, and our topic is anxiety. I think everybody deals with anxiety, but I think that folks with individuals with disabilities, it may impact a little bit more, just for natural reasons. And so we were able to find a real professional to come in and speak about this, and we're glad to have Chrissy Assad with us. Thanks for being with us, Chrissy.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate you taking the time. And as we said before, my best friend since kindergarten is Chrissy's husband, Eric. Mm-hmm. So it's pretty good. So up until now, we've been talking about anxiety, and I gave you a couple of examples of things that I dealt with as a child, and then in adulthood, we talked about some coping mechanisms and things you can do to kind of alleviate your anxiety and fear. And we were just talking during the break, and this episode is going flying by real quick, and there's a lot to talk about. Mm-hmm. And one of the I kind of told you how I felt like the martial arts helped me out. And one of the other things I think that helped me out was being a member of the fire department, and just understanding how that dynamic works, and the fact that you've got to open up and you've got to talk to people and you got to tell people how you feel. And I think for me, up until probably the light bulb didn't go off and that manly exterior didn't go away until about a year ago. I mean, I learned the skills through martial arts, but I wasn't one to talk about my feelings, and I certainly wasn't going to talk about my feelings to somebody that I didn't know, and that thought that they could have the answers, for me. Like, how do you know me? How do you know what I'm dealing with? You guys both know me pretty well, and I'm pretty thick-headed, and your husband will tell you just how thick-headed I am. But one of those mechanisms is to talk about it, and Lord knows another thing Eric will tell you is we've done a lot of talking while we've been growing up, and if it wasn't for him, I don't know where I'd be. He would. I look back on it. I emailed you today, and what a patient guy. I mean, I'm just very lucky to be surrounded by the people I am. Mm-hmm. He'd talk it through, and I'd say, yeah, but, and he'd say, there's no yeah buts, Jay. It is what it is, and it is what it is. And the yeah buts still get me. I mean, let's say, but yeah, but somebody can tell me until they're blue in the face, to the point where they're like, I've had enough, and the yeah buts are there. So I guess what I'm trying to tell you and tell our audience is that I don't know all the answers, but I can tell you that I understand what a lot of people are going through. And I can tell you that the first thing is you can't be ashamed of it, because I think that's a big thing. The second thing is you need to learn the skills or find the skills to be able to deal with it. And the third thing I found, and I kind of beat myself up because I feel like I'm doing good, and then all of a sudden the wheels will fall off, and I feel like I'm six steps back. I mean, we talked about my cat and the things that I've been dealing with over the past couple of days, and I was pretty good up until today. I'm managing it, and then the wheels just kind of fell off, and then I feel like, how can you go on and talk to this about people or or tell people that you have the answers when you can't even control it yourself. So I guess that's what I'd like you to speak to, Chrissy, is the fact of, being okay with it, and then realizing that, it's not always going to be good, but at least you got some skills to manage it, and you're doing better than you did. And then the other thing is so if there are people out there that are looking for more help, how can we help them, find that help that they need? And how can we also begin to break the stigma that is kind of around anxiety? And, a lot of times people will, the response they'll give you is, "Oh, just get over it." It's like, you don't get it. And to take it one step further, I mean, my wife suffers from the same thing. She had a pretty rough upbringing, and so she suffers from some of the same stuff, but she has panic attacks that go along with it. And I'm like, it's always easier when it's somebody else. It's like, just take a deep breath and get over it. So I'm guilty of doing that. So that's another thing. How can we be more conscious of and understanding of others in this?
Yeah. So I think kind of so I've like wrote a couple notes down next to me. So I was like, how do I want to organize myself? So how, I think the first thing is to remember that like we don't need to be perfect when we're dealing with this. I think when your mood is stable and like you're feeling good and you're able to deal with things and you're like, feeling like everything's like working out and you're doing really well, and then like something really stressful happens and like you don't cope with it well, right? And then you start beating yourself up for that. And when you're beating yourself up, you're making you're feeling ashamed, you're feeling bad about yourself, and then it just kind of, but it's important to remember that it's like, sometimes you're going to feel good and other times you're not going to feel good. Sometimes you're going to cope really well with your anxiety. So, sometimes you might be like a champion at dealing with a panic attack. Other times you might be like a hot mess and it might floor you for days. But that doesn't mean that, you're a failure or that, you don't have the skills that you need to live your life. It just means that in that particular instance, you struggled really hard. And, you can look back on it and reflect and think, okay, well, what can I change next time? What could I do differently next time to maybe make it a little bit easier on myself? I think we all, there's this, it's a skill, but this idea of self-compassion, right? That, we should treat ourselves the way that we treat the other people in our lives that we love and care about. So like if, let's say like Eric came to me and he was just like, I'm having a really bad day. I screwed up at work. I'm such a screw up, blah, blah, blah. I'm not, it'd be really weird if I was like, yeah, you are a screw up. Like I really messed up by getting married to you, man. I'm not going to respond like that. Right. I'm going to be like, tell me about it. Like what's going on? Like,
can I do that for you? Just to see if he smacks me.
Yeah.
No, I would never, again, like you said, I would never do that to him. Him and I are, and that's the cool thing about our relationship, not to get off on another path, but the relationship him and I have is like, it's one that I've never seen before or probably ever will again. And everybody wants to know, how are you friends with this guy since kindergarten? You're 42 something years old. And it's like, his business is his business. My business is my business. But when we needed each other, we always knew that it was just a phone call away. And I almost cashed in on that phone call today. So,
Eric, you want to come wave and say hello?
Hey, buddy. How you doing?
Good.
Hey, all I can say is I'm glad that you married her because I'm getting a free therapy session right now.
Yeah, she won't give me any of it though.
So, hey man, yeah, good to see you, man.
Yeah, you too.
I appreciate you letting me have a little bit of your time. This is a pretty important topic, and I think that we're gonna have a pretty good impact. So it's good to see you, man.
Yeah, you too. Talk to you later.
All right, buddy.
Cameo appearance.
Yeah, right. So, so not to get off on a tangent, but
Right. So if you know, so you want to treat like self-compassion. So you want to treat yourself like you would treat other people you care about. So if you're not going to tell someone you care about, like, yeah, you're a piece of junk, like you really screwed up, right? Why would you treat yourself like that? Like, why would you tell yourself like, oh, look at you, like screwing up again, like letting your anxiety get the best of you, you know, like you're not going to say that to Katie, you know? So like,
right.
don't have that kind of self-talk to yourself. And if you notice you're doing that kind of self-talk, just try and catch yourself and be like, wait a minute, like, do I deserve this right now? Or do I deserve like a little bit of like, would it be better if I showed some kindness to myself in this moment?
Right.
About, you know, how to help other people find the help they need. You know, I don't know about resources like specifically in people's specific areas, but one big resource that if you are looking for a therapist, if you do want to talk to somebody, you can go to, and I'm not being paid by Psychology Today. They're just like a big, well-known resource. So you can go to psychologytoday.com, and it just lists all different therapists in all different parts of the country. So you can type in, you know, the area that you live in, if you want to work with a man or a woman, if you're looking for a particular kind of therapy, if you want to work, you know, and all different, you can choose all different kinds of things. And you can also put in for what kind of insurance you have too. So that can be really helpful. So that's a big way that you can, you know, you can locate somebody. In most communities, there are just community-based mental health centers or mental health organizations. So, you know, mental health organizations that like serve the broader community and often have lots of different offices. I don't unfortunately know what's up in your area of Vermont.
Right.
But
you know, just in a general sense,
yeah.
What we want to let people know is that there, you know, there is help out there, and it can be found through pretty much a simple Google search of your area. It sounds like, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Okay. I mean, right now most providers. Well, I'm in Massachusetts, and Massachusetts has been hit pretty hard with coronavirus. So we're pretty much all doing telehealth right now. So we're all doing video sessions like this. But still, you know, many people are still accepting new clients. And regardless of meeting them in office or doing telehealth. So, you know, if you need help, like reach out. Even, you know, when I'm not accepting new clients, I always try and give people referral information for other practitioners I know who are accepting clients. So, you know, you could ask if, you know, if you if you reach out to a therapist and they say they're not taking new clients, you know, ask them if they can provide you with any suggestions for a person who is taking clients. So you know, you just have to be persistent, I guess is what I'm saying. It's also, you know, insurance can make things complicated. But, you know, keep trying, don't give up. Like, keep asking, you will find somebody, be persistent. There are clinicians out there who are wonderful and, you know, taking new clients and want to help.
And what about, I don't know if you wrote this down in your notes or not, but, you know, I talked about, and for me, it's kind of tough. What about sort of dropping that manly man exterior and saying, yeah, hey, I need to talk to somebody. I mean, Jay, you probably know what I'm talking about. It's just kind of a hard thing to say, hey, I need a hand. But you know, how do we let people know that it's okay, and how can we kind of break this stigma of, oh, if you're seeing a clinician, you know, something's wrong with you, you know, wow, you do that, you know, there's kind of a stigma behind that. So how do we break that manly man kind of thing, and then B, the whole stigma?
I mean, I think a big part of it is just talking about our own experiences with therapy. And, you know, if you do go to therapy, like sharing that you go and not keeping it like a deep, dark secret. Like, you know, I tell, like, if it comes up and it's useful in a session, like I let my clients know, like I see a therapist, you know, I like on a regular basis and talk to her about how I'm doing and my feelings, and, you know, and it's basically, it is, you know, and I'm trying to educate other people about therapy. It's like, well, you're pretty much like you're paying somebody to listen to you, and where you can go, this person isn't, you know, they're not judging you, they're not biased, they're just there to listen to you and support you. And, you know, there's nothing wrong with wanting to have, you know, a person in your life who is there to listen to you and support you and, you know, help you deal with your stress. Like stress doesn't care if you're a man or a woman, you know. Stress is stress, and we all deserve to learn ways to deal with it so that it doesn't kill us, you know. So I think just like continuing to talk about it, like the fact that you're sharing your story is really, really important. Because I'm sure a lot of people think like, oh, Jason, like he just like pushes through things, like, you know, he just does it, you know. But meanwhile, it's like there are these inner workings that you're experiencing that you are, you know, it's not just that you're like pushing through the fact that, you know, you have a physical disability. You're pushing through the fact that like you also are like dealing with your anxiety on a regular basis, you know, and that takes a lot of energy and work as well.
Right.
And it's just as equally as important, you know, to talk about and to acknowledge.
Yeah, and I do get that a lot. And now with the organization and the fact that I'm the face of it, as I said, I struggle sometimes with, you know, how can you go and tell these people, you know, that this is the way, or these are, you know, this is the answer, when you can't even control it yourself. But I guess from talking to you here today, I guess my job is not to do that. My job is to point them in the right direction, to get the skills and the help that they can to try to manage what they're dealing with, and just to let them know, hey, somebody else out there is dealing with what you're dealing with. And I think, would you agree that may be the answer to how do we break the stigma, is to start understanding that everybody's got their thing?
Yeah. And that's what I tell, like, you know, if I have a client who comes in and, you know, and they're identifying themselves, like, let's say like they're very depressed and they're like, well, I'm a depressed person and that's who I am. And, you know, and it's just like, and nobody else is like me, nobody else understands. And it's just like, there is depression, anxiety, like ADD, like all kinds of different stuff everywhere in every family. You know, it touches everybody in some way. And, you know, it's such a subjective experience. I think we all like to think we're kind of alone in our own little like mental issue bubbles, but we're not. You know, we're not alone at all. We're all like together in this. And the more we talk about it and share how we feel about things, you know, the more we can finally, I think, like cope with this and like address it in a better way than we're addressing it right now.
Right. And I think that, you know, we touched on it a little bit, but with the COVID right now, on top of the stresses of every day and the anxieties of every day, it's almost overload. I mean, I'm one that's like super careful. I'm like, now I'm comfortable with Amazon and pickup. I'll never go in the store again, because you just, A, it's convenient, and B, there's a little bit of a fear there, as much as people like to to say there's not, you know, and especially
Oh
for
yeah.
individuals in my situation that may
Right.
have an underlying health condition
Right.
that's magnified even more. So I guess bottom line closer is, if you're feeling it, talk about it, get the help you need. And so I was doing a little bit of math here, and don't tell Eric, but based on the length of our friendship and the conversations that we've had over the years, and the fact that he's helped me in a therapeutic way, I probably owe him quite a bit. Probably got a big check coming his way, but tell him not to wait for it.
Okay, we'll do that.
Jay, anything else, buddy?
No, that was very informative, Chrissy. I mean, that's
Well, thank you.
a lot of valuable information to take. I mean, I do have questions, but I think we could probably go all night with this scenario. So I think maybe we talk about having you on again at some point.
Sure. Yeah, I like that. Thank you.
You know, is that because it kind of felt like, Jay, I got to be honest with you, I kind of felt like it was sort of my thing and my story and stuff. Is there anything I missed that you can quickly that you want to ask Chrissy that you think might help our audience that I might have missed?
I guess the quick topic is a long-term anxiety versus maybe a short-term because of life event. You know, a death in the family, a tragic accident, something like that.
Yep.
I'm assuming that the coping mechanisms are the same for both long-term and a short-term anxiety.
Yes and no. If you get, let's say you experience like a bad car accident or something, and it becomes a traumatic event for you. That's a traumatic event for you, and it's important to, if you experience a traumatic event, to try and meet with a clinician as soon as possible in order to start talking and processing that event. Because if it goes unacknowledged, if it goes untreated, it can, continue to impact your life in very, let's say, more long-term ways. And that's basically how post-traumatic stress develops, is that you have a trauma, it goes unaddressed, unacknowledged, unprocessed, and then it manifests itself in a lot of different kinds of symptoms, but very problematic symptoms. So, with generalized anxiety, or anxiety that's kind of chronic, that goes on, people often they learn how to adapt and live with it. It's very uncomfortable, but they figure out how to get by. And so getting immediately, let's say, to a clinician is I'd say maybe less. You don't need to do that for generalized anxiety. It's helpful to get to a clinician as soon as you can if you have it, but I'd say it's more important if you go through something traumatic, like a loss of a loved one, anything that is, that you mark as a major change in your life that has caused you a great amount of distress, I'd say. Does that answer your question?
It does. It does, definitely.
Okay.
And
I think that's valuable.
And one other thing that Jay's question sort of sparked is, so for our military and our police and fire, the old adage of, well, just forget about it and bury it and it'll go away is not the way to deal with it at all.
Right.
That's just setting yourself up for super catastrophic failure. And if somebody's in that situation, military, police, or fire, what kind of advice would you have to them? It's sort of the same thing. Just don't worry about what people say. If you need to talk about it, talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say if you can, I mean, I think of, like first responders, right? Like seeing just repeated traumatic events over and over and over and over again, and just over time that builds and builds and builds and builds. And if you don't talk about it with somebody, if you don't give your space time to process those feelings and use that thinking part of your brain and give all of those feelings context and acknowledge how awful it was to see some of the awful things that you've seen, the feelings aren't going to go away. They're going to live there in your body, and they will manifest in it could make you like very angry. It could make you very irritable. It could impact your sleep, your appetite. It can can cause you to have nightmares and things like that. And so what you do when you go to therapy is you basically you talk about your experiences in a safe way, and you allow yourself to like unpack them basically, and process them. Whereas if you don't do that, you never process them, you just live with this like morass of feelings inside your body, and has all different kinds of bad side effects. So it's like, I know there's the VA hospital. I don't know about like wait times there in order to see, clinicians if you're part of the military. But I encourage, it's not, asking for help is not a sign of weakness. Asking for help is a sign of strength and resilience. You can't, it's not fair to yourself to try and do it alone, and it won't work if you try and do it alone. You need support to feel better. We are social animals. So there's nothing wrong with asking for help.
Chrissy, that's wonderful. This has been a wonderful episode. I'm glad we had an opportunity to do it. Jay, I'm glad you could join us again. And I can tell you, I mean, I told you my story. I talked it out in front of our audience here, and I can tell you that the podcast wasn't on my mind really tonight. I was just kind of going through the motions. But even this little session here, and just realizing that, hey, the stuff I am doing and the stuff I said, I'm at least on the right track. And so that kind of gives you a little sense of calm in itself. And so for that, I appreciate, and I appreciate the opportunity to have this platform to share my experiences, and I hope it helps somebody else. Jay, like you said, I think this is probably a 2-part episode at some point. We're just scratching the surface, but I appreciate you taking the time to be here with us and sharing your story as well. Chrissy, I know you guys are super busy, and so I really appreciate you taking your time to be here with us. And until next time, everybody, this has been Beyond the Label. I'm JD, and you're not Mike D. Who are you?
I'm Jason M.
That's right. See you later.
See ya. Thank you, Chrissy.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for listening to Beyond the Label. If you would like to be a guest on an upcoming episode, email contact@adaptivemartialarts.org. Beyond the Label is produced by JD Production and presented by Century Martial Arts, the world leader in martial arts since 1976. CenturyMartialArts.com for everything that is martial arts.